Ambassador Velther stood in his quarters aboard the orbital station, staring at the blue planet below. Earth, the newest species to apply for membership in the Galactic Council, had come from that world. His job was simple: review their culture, assess their fitness for joining the wider galaxy, and file his report. He had done this 17 times before. It was always routine. He pulled up the first file on his display. The document showed a human male standing at the open door of an aircraft, thousands of meters above the ground. Velther's throat sacs tightened in alarm. Was this a punishment? An execution? He watched as the human jumped out of the aircraft and plummeted toward the Earth. Velther's claws gripped his desk. Then a piece of fabric deployed from the human's back, slowing his fall. The human landed safely in a field and began gathering up the fabric, making sounds that the translator mocked as laughter. The file label read, "Recreational activity, skydiving." Recreational. They did this for fun. Velther opened another file. A human female stood on a cliff edge above deep water. She leaped off, arms spread wide, and fell nearly 30 meters before hitting the water. The impact alone should have shattered her bones. But she surfaced moments later, swimming to shore with what appeared to be joy on her face. The others with her cheered and celebrated. Cliff diving, the label said. He opened file after file. Humans throwing themselves down snowy mountains on narrow boards. Humans climbing vertical rock faces with minimal safety equipment. Humans entering dark buildings designed to frighten them, paying currency for the privilege of being scared. Humans jumping off bridges with elastic cords attached to their legs. Humans racing vehicles at speeds that would be fatal in any collision. Velther felt his secondary heart beginning to race. This couldn't be normal behavior. Perhaps these were criminals? Mentally disturbed individuals? He scheduled a meeting with the human liaison officer. Officer Sarah Chun arrived the next morning. She was young by human standards, wearing a dark blue uniform that marked her as a representative of Earth's United Space Command. She smiled when she entered, showing her teeth. Velther had read that this was meant to be friendly, though it looked remarkably like a threat display. "Ambassador Velther," she said, extending her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." He touched her hand briefly with his manipulator claw, completing the human greeting ritual. "Officer Chun, thank you for coming. I have questions about some of the cultural files your people submitted." "Of course. I'm here to help." She sat in the chair across from him, looking relaxed and comfortable despite being in an alien environment. Velther pulled up the skydiving video. "Can you explain this activity?" Chun watched the video, and her smile grew wider. "Oh, skydiving. Yes, that's pretty popular. People jump out of planes and freefall before deploying their parachutes. The rush is incredible." "The rush?" Velther's translator took a moment with the phrase. "The feeling. The adrenaline. It's exciting." Chun leaned forward. "Have you ever done something that made your heart race? That made you feel truly alive?" "I prefer activities that keep me alive," Velther said carefully. "Is this some form of ritual? A coming-of-age ceremony?" Chun laughed, a bright sound that echoed in the small room. No, it's just for fun. Some people do it once or twice, others make it a hobby. My uncle has jumped over 300 times. Velther felt dizzy. Your uncle has willingly fallen from the sky 300 times. Well, yes. He loves it. The ambassador pulled up more files. And this? Climbing sheer rock faces? Racing at dangerous speeds? Deliberately entering frightening situations? Chun nodded at each one. Rock climbing, motorsports, haunted houses. Yeah, those are all pretty common. We call them extreme sports or thrill-seeking activities. They're not for everyone, but millions of people do them. But why? Velther's voice rose higher than he intended. Why would your species deliberately court death for entertainment? Chun paused, considering the question seriously. I guess we don't really see it that way. I mean, yes, there's risk involved. But we take precautions. Parachutes have backup chutes. Climbers use safety gear. Race car drivers wear protective equipment. The danger is part of the appeal, but we're not trying to die. We're trying to feel something intense. Something real. This is real to you? Falling from the sky is not sufficiently real? It's hard to explain, Chun said. For a lot of us, normal life can feel kind of flat, safe, and predictable. These activities remind us that we're alive. They test our limits. They make us feel capable and strong. Arthur sat back in his chair. And your government permits this? Your medical professionals don't intervene? Permit it? We encourage it. Physical challenges are considered healthy, as long as people are being reasonably safe about it. It builds confidence and resilience. The ambassador closed the files. Officer Chun, I must be direct with you. In the 17 species I have evaluated for council membership, none have displayed such casual disregard for self-preservation. Most species engage in dangerous activities only when absolutely necessary. Your people appear to seek them out. Chun's expression grew more serious. With respect, Ambassador, I think you're misunderstanding us. We're not reckless. We calculate risks. We prepare, we train, but we're not afraid of challenges. Our history is full of people who did impossible things because no one told them it couldn't be done. This troubles me greatly, Velther admitted. May I ask you something? Chun said. What does your species do for recreation? Velther considered. We engage in artistic pursuits. Music, literature, visual arts. We have strategic games that exercise the mind. We enjoy cuisine and social gatherings. That sounds nice, Chun said genuinely. We do all of those things too. But some of us also need physical challenges. We need to push ourselves. It's part of who we are. After Chun left, Velther began composing his preliminary report. His claws hesitated over the keys. How could he explain this to the council? Humans were technologically advanced, diplomatically minded, and culturally rich. But they also jumped out of perfectly functional aircraft for fun. He typed, humans display reckless disregard for self-preservation in recreational contexts. Recommend deeper investigation before proceeding with membership evaluation. As he sent the report, Velther looked at Earth again through his window. What kind of world, he wondered, would create a species that treated danger as entertainment? What evolutionary pressures would make such behavior not just acceptable, but celebrated? The Council's response came within hours. They wanted a full investigation. Velther was authorized to travel to Earth's surface for direct observation. He would need to see their world firsthand to understand them. Looking at the authorization, Velther felt something unfamiliar in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. He was afraid of what he might find on that blue planet. And the humans who lived there would probably call that feeling exciting. The shuttle descent made Velther's organs feel like they were shifting inside his body. Earth's gravity was significantly higher than what he was used to. Beside him, Dr. Kestrin, the xenobiologist assigned to the mission, kept adjusting the support straps on her environmental suit. This feels wrong, Kestrin muttered. The gravity readings must be incorrect. Officer Chun, piloting the shuttle, glanced back with that disturbing, tooth-bearing smile. Nope, readings are accurate. Earth's gravity is about standard for us. You'll adjust in a few days. A few days? Kestrin's voice climbed higher. Maybe a week, Chum said cheerfully. We're landing in Oregon. It's a pretty mild area. Temperate climate, nice forests, not too many dangerous animals. Velther's translator struggled with not too many. That implied some dangerous animals were present. He had reviewed Earth's fauna. The variety of apex predators was excessive. Bears, big cats, wolves, sharks in the water, crocodiles, venomous snakes and spiders. Even some of the plants were toxic. The shuttle landed in a clearing near a human settlement. The moment the door opened, Velther gasped. The air burned in his respiratory system. The oxygen concentration, he wheezed. "Oh, right," Chum said, checking her datapad. "Earth's atmosphere is about 21% oxygen. Is that a problem?" "That's nearly flammable," Kestrin said, her voice tight with alarm. "How do you not have constant fires?" "We do have fires sometimes," Chun said, stepping out of the shuttle like the dangerous atmosphere didn't bother her at all. "Forest fires, mostly. They're natural. Some plants even need fire to reproduce." Velther forced himself to follow, his environmental suit helping process the hostile air. Each step felt like he was carrying twice his normal weight. The local star beat down with radiation that made his skin prickle, even through the protective layers. He checked his scanner. "Officer Chun, are you aware that your son's radiation output would be considered hazardous on most worlds?" Chun shrugged. "We wear sunscreen. Come on, I'll show you around town." The human settlement was modest by their standards, a few thousand residents. But even here, Velther saw things that disturbed him. Humans jogging along paths in the oppressive heat, deliberately exerting themselves in the crushing gravity. Small humans' children climbing trees and structures with drops that could cause serious injury. A human rode past on a two-wheeled vehicle, balanced impossibly, with nothing but a thin helmet for protection. "Doesn't that human fear falling?" Velther asked, pointing at the cyclist. "From a bike?" "I mean, everyone falls sometimes when they're learning. You just get back on." Chun led them toward a building. "This is my family's home. My parents are excited to meet you." Inside the structure, Velther encountered another shock. A massive furry creature came bounding toward them, teeth exposed, making loud vocalizations. Velther stumbled backward, reaching for the emergency beacon on his suit. Chum laughed and scratched the creature behind its ears. "This is Max. He's our dog. Golden Retriever. Very friendly." "That animal weighs over 30 kilograms, Kestrin said faintly. "Those teeth could easily tear flesh." "Oh, Max wouldn't hurt anyone. He's a sweetheart." The creature's tail moved rapidly back and forth. Chum's translator had said this meant happiness, but it looked like an aggressive display. Chum's parents greeted them warmly. Her father, a large human with graying hair, shook Velther's claw with enough force to make him wince. "Welcome to Earth. Sarah's told us all about you. Can we get you anything? Water? Food?" "We have our own nutrition," Velther said carefully. "But thank you." They sat in the family's dwelling, and Velther tried to focus on his mission rather than the way the furniture pressed into his body under the heavy gravity. "Officer Chun mentioned your family has lived in this region for several generations." "That's right," Chun's mother said. "My great-great-grandparents homesteaded about 50 kilometers from here. Tough people. They survived some harsh winters. Harsh by what standards?" Kestrin asked. "Oh, temperatures down to -20 Celsius. Heavy snow. Sometimes the roads would be impassable for weeks." She spoke about this like it was a minor inconvenience. Velther checked his datapad. -20 Celsius. That was cold enough to kill most species he knew. And they survived? Well, sure. You just prepare. Stock up on food and fuel. Keep the fire going. It's not that bad. Chun's father leaned forward. "Actually, Sarah mentioned you wanted to know about our history. About how we adapted to Earth." "Yes," Velther said eagerly. This was what he needed. Perhaps he could understand why humans were the way they were. Your planet appears to be unusually hostile to life. The parents exchanged glances. Hostile? Her mother said, Earth? I mean, it can be challenging in places, but it's home. Chun's father stood up and walked to a shelf, pulling down a worn book. Let me tell you about some of our history. About 75,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted in what we now call Indonesia. The ash and debris blocked out the sun for years. Global temperatures dropped. Most of humanity died. Valther felt cold despite the warm room. Most of humanity? Estimates say we were reduced to maybe 10,000 individuals. We almost went extinct. He said this calmly, like discussing weather. But we survived. We adapted. We spread out across the continents. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues that killed huge portions of our population. We survived droughts and floods and earthquakes. Your species has faced multiple extinction-level events, Kestrin said slowly. Well, yes, but we're still here. Chun's mother smiled. Life on Earth is resilient. You have to be, to survive here. Thunder rumbled outside. Within moments, rain began hammering against the building's roof. Then came a flash of light so bright it hurt Valther's eyes, followed by a boom that shook the structure. He jumped to his feet, hearts racing. We must seek shelter. The shuttle. It's just a thunderstorm, Chun said. Pretty mild one, actually. The shuttle will be fine. Valther watched through the window as electricity arced from the sky to the ground. Each bolt carried enough energy to vaporize organic matter. This is mild? Spring storms can be way more intense, Chun's father said. Tornadoes, hail, that kind of thing. But this is just rain and lightning. Just, Valther repeated weakly. The storm passed within an hour. The humans continued their conversation like nothing remarkable had occurred. As the evening progressed, Valther learned more. The humans had survived ice ages lasting thousands of years. They had endured pandemics that killed significant portions of their population. They had lived through natural disasters that would have ended most civilizations. And they spoke about it all with casual acceptance. That night, back in the shuttle, Valther and Kestrin reviewed their findings. The xenobiologist's claws tapped rapidly on her datapad. Ambassador, I need to show you something. She pulled up a classification chart. I've been analyzing Earth's environmental factors. The gravity, atmospheric composition, radiation levels, temperature extremes, weather patterns, seismic activity, and biodiversity. When I input all the data, the screen flashed with a result. Class 12 Death World. That can't be right, Valther said. No species from a Class 12 world has ever developed spaceflight. The environmental pressures are too extreme. Most species from Class 12 worlds never develop beyond simple tools. Humans aren't most species, Kestrin said quietly. Ambassador, I don't think humans are reckless. I think they're the product of a planet that's been trying to kill them for millions of years. And somehow, impossibly, they won. They adapted so completely that they don't even realize how extraordinary their environment is. Valther looked out at the dark forest surrounding their landing site. Somewhere in those trees were animals that could kill him easily. The weather could turn deadly without warning. The very air was a fire hazard. And humans called this place home. They raised their children here. They built civilizations here. Their reality, he said slowly, is our nightmare. Yes, Kestrin agreed. And they think it's normal. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with conversation as representatives from 47 species debated humanity's application. Valther watched from his seat, waiting for his turn to present. The findings from Earth had created an unprecedented situation. A species from a Class 12 Death World wanted to join Galactic Civilization. Council Speaker Mortek raised her wing for silence. We have reviewed Ambassador Velther's report with great interest and some alarm. The question before us is clear. Do we accept humanity, or do we deny their application on grounds of incompatibility? I vote for quarantine, Representative Zack said, his scales flushing purple with agitation. A species that evolved under such extreme conditions could be dangerous. Their tolerance for risk, their physical capabilities, their adaptation to hostile environments, these things could make them aggressive expansionists. Or valuable allies, countered Representative Schiller. We have many member species with unique strengths. Perhaps humanity's resilience could benefit us all. Mortek gestured to Velther. Ambassador, you spent considerable time observing the humans. What is your recommendation? Velther stood, feeling the weight of this decision. Honored representatives, I believe we should give humanity a chance to demonstrate their capabilities. I propose the standard colony establishment trial. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The colony trial was a traditional test for new species. Establish a basic settlement on a designated habitable world within a reasonable time frame. Every council species had completed it. The current record was held by the Cretan, who had established a functioning colony in 6 months. The trial is designed to showcase a species' technical and organizational capabilities, Mortek said. Do you believe humans will perform adequately? I believe they will surprise us all, Velther said carefully. The council voted. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would get their trial. 3 weeks later, Velther stood in the observation center watching the feeds from New Terra, the designated colony world. The planet was habitable but challenging unpredictable weather, limited natural resources in the landing zone, and local wildlife that could be aggressive. It was meant to test a species' adaptability without being impossible. The human ship had landed 2 days ago. Velther expected to see them slowly establishing a perimeter, carefully surveying the area, taking methodical steps toward basic infrastructure. That's what every other species did. Instead, the humans had already cleared 3 hectares of land. Temporary shelters dotted the clearing. A human-operated drilling rig was boring into the ground, searching for water. Another team was analyzing soil samples, while a third group worked on assembling what looked like a solar power array. How are they moving so quickly? Kestrin asked, studying the feeds beside him. Watch this, Velther said, pointing to one screen. A human carried a load that must have weighed at least 40 kilograms. In New Terra's slightly higher gravity, that should have been nearly impossible. The human set down the load, wiped sweat from his face, and went back for more. They're working in shifts. 8 hours of heavy labor, 8 hours of light duty, 8 hours of rest. Then they repeat. That work schedule would exhaust most species within a week. Kestrin said. They've been maintaining it since landing. On another screen, a team was planting crops in hastily prepared soil. Those are fast-growing varieties. Officer Chun's voice came through the comm. She was in the observation center as well, representing Earth's interests. We should have fresh vegetables in about 40 days. Until then, we have rations. 40 days? Velther turned to her. Most species require 3 to 4 months before local food production. Chum smiled. We picked crops that grow quickly. We're also cultivating some of New Terra's native plants. Initial tests show several species are edible with minimal processing. You're testing native plants? Kestrin's voice rose in alarm. The safety protocols alone should take weeks. We have volunteers running controlled tests, Chine said calmly. Small amounts, careful observation. It's safe enough. Safe enough, Velther repeated. There was that human risk calculation again. The days turned into weeks. The human colony grew faster than anyone predicted. They established a geothermal power system by tapping into a volcanic heat source that other species would have avoided entirely. They domesticated some of the local wildlife to help with heavy labor. When equipment broke down, and it did frequently in new terras, harsh conditions, the humans repaired it with improvised parts. In week 5, disaster struck. A massive storm system moved across the colony site with almost no warning. Winds strong enough to tear apart structures. Rain that turned the ground to mud. Lightning that struck the power array. Valther watched the feeds with growing horror as the storm raged through the settlement. "They need to evacuate," Representative Zach said, having joined the observation center. "This storm will destroy everything they've built." But the humans didn't evacuate. They secured what they could, took shelter in their strongest structures, and waited it out. The storm raged for 18 hours. When it finally passed, Valther surveyed the damage. 3 shelters destroyed. The power array damaged. Crops flattened. Equipment scattered across the site. "This will set them back weeks," Kestrin said sadly. "Perhaps months." On the feed, a human emerged from shelter and looked at the destruction. Then another human joined her. Then more. Within minutes, they were organizing, salvaging materials, checking on each other. One human started laughing, pointing at another who was covered in mud. Soon others were laughing too. "Why are they laughing?" Zax asked, bewildered. "Because they're alive," Chun said quietly. "And that means they can rebuild." Rebuild they did. Within 3 days, all the shelters were repaired or replaced. Within a week, the power system was back online, improved with better storm protection. They replanted crops in areas less exposed to wind. Every setback became a lesson. Every problem became an opportunity to make something better. One incident particularly struck Valther. A human named Martinez was injured while working with local wildlife. One of the creatures, not fully tamed, knocked her down and gashed her leg. The medical team treated her immediately, sealing the wound and pumping her full of antibiotics. 3 days later, she was back at work, limping slightly but insisting she was fine. "On my world," Valther said to Chen, "such an injury would require weeks of recovery." "Martinez is tough," Chen said. "Plus, she doesn't want to let her team down. They're all counting on each other." That Valther realized was another key to human success. They worked as a unit. When one struggled, others compensated. When someone failed, the team adapted. There was no individual glory in their colony, only collective achievement. In week 11, the human colony met all the criteria for successful establishment. Permanent structures, sustainable food production, reliable power and water, established safety protocols. They had done in 11 weeks what took most species 6 to 8 months. But they didn't stop. They expanded their agricultural plots. They began surveying for mineral deposits. They established a small research station to study New Terra's ecosystem. When the council sent a message congratulating them on completing the trial, the human commander sent back a request. Permission to continue the colony. "We'd like to stay and see what else we can build here." In the observation center, Zach stared at the message. "They want to stay? On that difficult world? After everything that's happened?" "Of course they do," Valther said, finally understanding. "Because to them, this isn't difficult. This is just another challenge. Another mountain to climb, another storm to weather, another impossibility to make possible." Chun nodded. "That's humanity for you. We don't know when to quit." "No," Valther said, looking at the thriving colony on the screens. "You don't know how to quit. There's a difference. The council would have to make a decision about humanity's membership. But watching those humans work on New Terra, building something from nothing in conditions that would daunt most species, Valther knew what his recommendation would be. Humanity belonged among the stars. Not because they were fearless, but because they looked at fear, acknowledged it, and kept moving forward anyway. 6 months after humanity joined the Galactic Council, Velther was beginning to understand the full implications of what they had done. Humans were everywhere now. Human trading ships traveled routes through asteroid fields and radiation zones that other species avoided. Human contractors took jobs other species considered too risky. Human explorers volunteered for survey missions to systems marked as hazardous, and the galaxy was changing because of it. Velther sat in a council briefing listening to reports. A human cargo ship had successfully navigated a debris field that had been considered impassable, opening up a new trade route that cut travel time by 15%. A human survey team had discovered mineral-rich moons in a system previously deemed too unstable to explore. Human engineers had solved a waste recycling problem on a council station that had plagued them for years, simply by approaching it from a different angle. "They're making us all look slow," Representative Sheeler said with what Velther had learned to recognize as amusement. "Half my species' trade guilds are complaining that humans are taking all the difficult contracts because they're the only ones willing to take them." Representative Zax grumbled, though his earlier hostility toward humans had faded somewhat. "They don't seem to understand the concept of too dangerous." "Oh, they understand it," Velther said. "They just have a different threshold for where that line is drawn." The meeting ended, and Velther returned to his quarters to find an urgent message waiting. A council science station in the Typhon system had sent a distress signal. Catastrophic equipment failure. Toxic gases building up in the lower levels. Evacuation needed immediately. The problem was simple and terrible. Typhon Station sat in a volcanic region of a geologically active moon. The heat and mineral wealth made it valuable for research, but the environment was hostile. Active lava flows, superheated gases, constant seismic activity. Only specially shielded ships could operate there, and even those had limited time before the conditions became too much. Velther pulled up the evacuation calculations. Current council vessels in range could extract approximately 40% of the station's personnel within the safe window of 48 hours. After that, toxic gases would make it impossible to reach the survivors. The message went out across the sector. Every available council ship was being mobilized. But the numbers didn't lie. 60% of the researchers on Typhon Station were going to die. Then another message came through. Commander Jackson of the Human Merchant Fleet, operating 3 ships in the sector. "We've received the distress call. All 3 vessels are diverting to Typhon. 8 to 11 hours. Velther felt his heart sink. Human courage was admirable, but this was suicide. "Commander Jackson, I appreciate your species' willingness to help, but your ships aren't rated for Typhon's conditions." Jackson's face on the screen looked grim but determined. "We've reviewed the environmental data. It's bad, but we've operated in similar conditions. We're coming." "Commander, this isn't heroism. This is, with respect, Ambassador, this is happening." Jackson out. Velther immediately contacted Officer Chun, who had become his primary liaison for human affairs. "Your people are going to get themselves killed. 3 merchant ships against Typhon's environment?" Chun pulled up data on her screen. "Those aren't just merchant ships, Ambassador. They're piloted by humans who've worked in extreme environments." Commander Jackson spent 10 years working on Venus extraction platforms. Her co-pilot logged time in Earth's deep ocean trenches. "These people know hostile environments. Venus?" Velther's translator took a moment. "That's your sister planet, correct? The one with surface temperatures that melt lead?" "Humans don't work on the surface. We have floating platforms in the upper atmosphere. It's still pretty harsh, but the mineral yields are worth it." Chum said this like it was perfectly reasonable. Velther pulled up data on Venus. Surface. Temperature of 464 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure 90 times Earth's standard. Clouds of sulfuric acid. You colonized that. Partially. It's not a pleasant place to live, but we manage. Look, Ambassador, I know you're worried. But humans have been operating in hostile environments since before we had written language. Trust us on this. Velthor had no choice but to watch. The feeds from Typhon showed the evacuation in progress. Council ships made careful approaches, spending minimal time in the dangerous zone, extracting people in small groups. It was slow and methodical, and not nearly fast enough. Then the human ships arrived. Velthor watched in astonishment as they dove into conditions that should have fried their shields. They navigated between lava flows with meters to spare. They flew through superheated gas plumes that would have torn apart most vessels. Their pilots moved with precision and confidence, like they had done this 1,000 times. How are they surviving in there? Kestrin asked, monitoring the feeds. Their shield harmonics are different, one of the council engineers said, studying the readings. They're cycling power more aggressively, redirecting energy on the fly. It's risky if they miscalculate. The shields fail entirely, but it's allowing them to maintain integrity in conditions that would overwhelm our standard shielding. The human ships extracted people in larger groups, taking more risks to save more lives. When a lava flow blocked the primary approach, Commander Jackson's ship found an alternate route through a volcanic lightning storm. When seismic activity threatened one of the docking ports, another human pilot held position despite the shaking, waiting for the researchers to board. One human pilot, Chum had told Velthor his name was Rodriguez, made 7 runs into the station, 7 times diving into that hell. On his 8th run, his shields were at 15% and alarms were screaming warnings. He extracted the last group of researchers and pulled away just as a new lava flow engulfed the area he'd been in. When the evacuation was complete, 100% of Typhon Station's personnel were safe. Not 40%. All of them. Commander Jackson's face appeared on the council's main screen. She looked exhausted, her uniform soaked with sweat. Typhon Station personnel secured. All 3 ships sustained damage, but remain operational. Returning to base for repairs. Commander, Velthor said, unable to keep the emotion from his voice. You saved lives that we had calculated as lost. I don't know how to express my gratitude. Jackson smiled, that human expression that no longer seemed threatening to Velthor. We do what needs doing, Ambassador. That's all. After the Typhon rescue, something shifted in the council. The other species began to see what Velthor had learned. Humans weren't reckless or suicidal. They had simply evolved on a world that demanded more from them than most species could imagine. And in meeting those demands, they had become capable of things others thought impossible. A week later, Velthor sat with Officer Chun in the orbital station's observation lounge, watching Earth rotate below them. He had spent months studying humanity, and he finally felt like he understood them. Can I ask you something? Velthor said. That day I first interviewed you, when I showed you all those dangerous activities humans do. You said they made you feel alive. I remember, Chun said. Do you feel fear when you do those things? When you jump from aircraft or climb mountains or face danger? Chun considered the question carefully. Yes, of course we feel fear. Fear is useful. It keeps us alert, makes us careful. It's a survival mechanism. Then how do you move forward despite it? Because fear isn't the only thing we feel, Chun said. We also feel curiosity, determination, hope, the desire to achieve something difficult. Fear tells us there's danger, but courage tells us we can face it anyway. She turned to look at him. Every human who's ever done something brave has felt fear, Ambassador. We're not fearless. We're just practiced at not letting fear make our decisions for us. Velthor thought about the human pilots diving into Typhon's volcanic hell. About Martinez limping back to work days after injury. About Commander Jackson making 8 runs into conditions that should have killed her. You feel fear, but you choose to act anyway. Every single time, Chun confirmed. That's what courage is. It's not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. On most worlds, that would be considered exceptional, Velther said. Heroes would be celebrated for such behavior. On Earth, we call it Tuesday, Chun said with a smile. Velther understood now. Humanity's reality was shaped by a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them. They had adapted, survived, and thrived by developing a relationship with danger that other species couldn't comprehend. They acknowledged risk, calculated it, managed it, but didn't let it stop them. To humans, the galaxy wasn't full of dangers to be avoided. It was full of challenges to be overcome. And that perspective, more than any technology or strategy, was what made them extraordinary. Thank you, Velther said quietly. For what? For teaching me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's just refusing to let fear be the end of the story. He looked at the blue planet below. You terrify us, you know? But I think we needed that. You remind us that there's more possible than we thought. Chun raised her cup in a salute. To possibility, then. To possibility, Velther echoed. And to humanity, who looked at the impossible and simply asked, how do we make this work? That, he had learned, was the most human question of all. Part 2. The Death World classification verthe Earth for direct observation, bringing a xenobiologist named Dr. Kestrin. They land in what humans call a temperate region and immediately struggle with Earth's conditions. The gravity is crushing. The atmospheric oxygen concentration is dangerously high, practically flammable. The local predators include apex hunters that outweigh the aliens by hundreds of pounds. Humans, however, thrive here. They jog through the wilderness for exercise. They keep descendants of apex predators in their homes as pets. Officer Chun casually mentions that her ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and a supervolcano eruption. When a storm rolls in with lightning that could vaporize the alien shuttle, humans simply go indoors and continue their day. Dr. Kestrin classifies Earth as a Class 12 death world, the first time any species from such an extreme environment has developed spaceflight. The revelation spreads through the Council. Humans aren't reckless. They're the product of a planet that tried to kill them for millions of years, and they won. Their reality is everyone else's nightmare scenario. The Council debates whether to accept humanity or quarantine them. Velther argues that their resilience could be valuable, but others fear what a species that evolved under such conditions might become. Part 3. The Endurance. Demonstration. The Council invites humanity to demonstrate their capabilities before a final vote. The test is simple: a standard colony setup mission on a newly discovered habitable planet. Every Council species has performed this trial. It typically takes 6 to 8 months with a crew of specialists. Humanity sends a mixed crew of scientists, engineers and volunteers, people who signed up for the challenge. The aliens observe as humans land on a planet with hostile wildlife, unstable weather, and limited resources. Within weeks, the humans have established agriculture, constructed shelters, and begun mining operations. They work in shifts that would exhaust any other species. When equipment fails, they improvise repairs with materials on hand. What disturbs the observers most is how humans respond to setbacks. When a crew member is injured by local fauna, they treat her wounds and she returns to work days later, joking about her close call. When a storm destroys part of their settlement, they rebuild it stronger. When food runs low, they forage, identifying edible native plants through trial and error, testing them on themselves. Velther realizes the truth. Humans don't have a concept of giving up. Their evolution on Earth didn't permit it. Species that gave up went extinct. The humans complete the colony setup in 11 weeks, setting a new record. They request permission to stay and continue expanding the settlement because it's interesting. Part 4. The reality shift. The Council grants humanity provisional membership, but tensions emerge. Human traders begin operating in galactic space, taking routes through hazardous regions that other species avoid. Human mercenaries become legendary for accepting impossible contracts. Human explorers volunteer for survey missions to systems considered too dangerous.